Today, we are going to talk about an important question: who participated in planning a more equitable future? When we think about planning for the future, a key question we must ask is who is actually involved in shaping it, who has a seat at the table, and more importantly, who is left out. Decision makings in planning affect everything from housing and transportation to public spaces and environmental justice. Today, we are going to explore the different groups involved in shaping a more equitable future and why inclusion is essential in this process. To understand public participation in planning, we need to talk about someone whose work has shaped the ways we think about citizen involvement in decision making, Sherry Armstead. Sherry Armstead was born in 1930 in New York City, but moved to California at a young age. She studied at UCLA, where she earned a degree in physical education. Now you might be wondering how did someone with a background in physical education become such an influential figure in urban planning? Her career path took a turn when she started working as a special assistant at the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. It was there that he gained insight into the role of the government in decision making, particularly how policies affect communities and how much or how little public participations was actually involved. Armstead's most influential work was her 1969 journal article, A Ladder of Citizen Participation. This article broke down the different level of public participations in decision making, highlighting how some form of participations was more symbolic rather than genuine. He argues that not all participations is created equal. Sometimes governments or organizations give the appearance of including the public, but in reality, citizens have very little actual powers in decision making. Her ladder of participation virtually represent these different levels, from token gestures at the bottoms to true citizen power at the top. Armstead didn't stop with the latter citizens' participation. He continued to explore themes of power, um, manipulations, and public engagement in planning through other writing, including maximum feasible manipulation in 1972, which examined how public participations was often controlled or manipulated rather than genuine encouraged. And working models of public participation in 1975, which provided a framework for how governments and organizations could structure meaningful public participation. So why is Armstead work still relevant today? Because the questions of who participates in planning is just as important now as it was in 1969. Many communities still struggle to have a meaningful voice in planning decisions that affect their daily lives. Armstead's work challenges us to ask, are we truly including people in decision making? Or are we just giving them an illusion of participation? As we move forward, we will explore how different groups, governments, planners, community organizations, private developers, and everyday citizens play a role in shaping a more equitable future. Okay, now that we have introduced uh Upstand and her influential work, I want to show you the full image of her ladder of citizen participation. These visual representations help us understand the different level of public involvement in decision making, ranging from complete non-participation to full citizen power. Unification is the very bottom of the ladder. This is where authorities pretend to involve citizens, but in reality use participation as a public relations strategies to justify decisions that have already been made. A common example is placing people's on rubber stamp um, advisory committees or task force that exist only to make it look like the public is engaged. These groups have no real power, and their input is either ignored or selectively used to support predetermined outcomes. Right above that is therapy, which is slightly different but still problematic. Instead of openly manipulating people, officials frame participations as a way to educate or correct the community concerns rather than listening them. The idea is that if people are unhappy with a policy or project, it's because they don't fully understand it, not because the policy itself is flawed. Public meetings and workshops may be organized, but rather than giving people a real say, the focus is on convincing them to accept the decisions that have already been made. A clear example of this is when residents raise concern about the justification and disagreement, but instead of addressing them fears, planners hold informational sessions to explain the benefits of development, completely avoiding the real issue. In some cases, extensive activities are designed to kill uh, 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 opposition by shaping public uh, opinion rather than responding to real concerns. So both manipulations and therapies are not real participation. They exist to preserve power structures where making it seem like the public is involved. Okay, now let's move up the ladders to the middle uh ranks, uh, uh informing, consolation, and play application, where participation exists, but real power remains limited. These sections of the ladder is what Upstem refers to as tokenism, a stage where the public is involved in the process to some degree, but actual decision-making power still rests elsewhere. People may have the opportunity to speak, but they do not necessarily have the ability to influence outcomes in a meaningful way. At the informing stage, participation is one directional. The public is simply told what is happening, decisions have already been made, and there is no opportunities for feedback or discussion. This might comes in the form of newsletters, press releases, or a government website that explains new policies or projects. Where keeping people informed is important, this alone is not true participation because it does not allow for community input or influence. One step above that is consultants, like the consultation, where authorities ask for public input, but they are under no obligations to act on it. Consultations can take many forms, surveys, public hearings, or comment period. At this level, people are encouraged to express their opinion, but there is no guarantees that their voice will actually shape the final decision. A common example is a city hosting a public forum about a new highway project, where residents can express their concerns, but automatically the project move forward as planned. The highest rank is in this categories is application, where citizens are given a more active role, but real power still remains in the hand of the decision makers. They may serve on advisory committees, review boards, or special task force, but these bodies usually lack authority. The public may have a seat at the table, but they are not the one making the final call. A common example is when a city government includes communities representative in a redevelopment project, but doesn't not actually grant them the power to reject or modify major decisions. In all three cases, public participations may appear to be happening, but decision making still rests with those in power. Where these stage are better than the manipulation and the therapy level at the bottom of the ladder, they still fall short of giving a community true control over the decisions that affect them. Now let's move to the top three ranks of the ladder. Partnership, dedicated powers, and citizen control, where the public gains real influence and decision-making authority. At this level, we enter what Armstrong defined as a citizen power, where power is no longer concentrated solely in the hand of the government agencies or institutions, but is distributed between citizens and the decision maker. The first levels in this category is partnership, where citizens and power holders share decision-making authorities in a give and take relationship. Unlike the lower ranks, where public input is limited or symbolic, at this stage, community members are actually involved in negotiating outcomes and shaping policies. Partnerships are most effective when systems are well organized and well funded, giving them abilities to hire their own experts, conduct independent research, and challenge official proposals. So, for example, in some cities, neighborhood councils work directly with local governments to develop zoning policies, ensuring that the community needs are prioritized alongside economic and development goals. One step above that is dedicated power. At this level, citizens hold significant authority and can make binding decisions on policies and projects. Rather than just offering recommendation, they may have control over specific programs or funding decisions. This is where we start to see true redistributions of power, where citizens are not just participants, but decision makers. A good examples would be communities lead housing boards that have the power to allocate funds for affordable housing project, or environmental justice committees that set regulations for industry development in the neighborhood. At the very top of the ladder is citizen control, the highest form of public participation. At this level, communities have a full decision-making power and are able to plan, manage, and implement policies without needing approval from outside authorities. This means that the government agencies and institutions play a supportive role rather than a controlling one. An example of this is when communities own and operate their own school, housing development, or public services, making decisions independently from internal entities. These top three levels represent true a community empowerment where peoples are not just consulted or informed, but are actually in control of shaping the environments. However, reaching these levels requires strong citizen organization, legal structure that support power sharing, and political will to transfer authorities to community. Now that we have explored the entire ladder of participation, the questions we must ask is, where do most planning process for today? How do we move towards greater citizen powers in decision making? So understanding this framework allows us to recognize when participation is meaningful and when this is simply an illusion. It's important to recognize that where these models provide a useful framework for understanding different level of public involvement, it also have limitations. Participation in planning is complex, and this model does not fully account for some of the major challenges that communities and decision makers face when trying to achieve a meaningful participation. One key limitation is that the model does not analyze the biggest roadblocks to achieving genuine participation. Where the latter illustrates different level of power, it doesn't fully address why this is so difficult to move up the ladder. The barriers exist on both sides, among those in power and among marginalized communities themselves. On the powerhouse side, major obstacles include racism, uh, uh, paternalism, and resistance to powers redistribution. In many cases, those in control, whether government agencies, corporations, or policymakers, do not want to give up their authority. They may fear losing control over resources, economic interest, or political influence. Sometimes decision makers may claim to support public participation, but in reality, they design engagement process that reinforce existing power structure rather than change them. On the community side, challenges stem from political, socioeconomic, and structural barriers that make it difficult for marginalized group to organize effectively. Many disadvantaged communities lack access to educational resources, fundings, and technical expertise, which limited their ability to advocate for themselves in formal planning processes. In addition, historical oppressions and systematic inequalities have led to deep-rooted distrust, alienations, and a sense of futility. People may fear that even if they participate, their voice won't make a difference. So they disengage from the process altogether. Another limitation of this model is that the wrongs can be overlapping in real-world situations. Public participation is really a clear-cut process where communities are placed neatly on one rank or another. A city may claim to be engaging in partnership, but in reality, participations may function more like application if decision makers still hold the final authority. In many cases, participation efforts are a mix of different levels, making it difficult to categorize them strictly within the ladder framework. Finally, some critics argue that the upstairs later present uh, pessimistic view of the planning efforts. The model suggests that most public participation is either uh, 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 manipulative, symbolic, or ineffective, which can make it seem like meaningful participation is nearly impossible to achieve. Where the latter is a valuable tool for critiquing power dynamics, it does not highlight successful examples of participatory planning or provide solutions for overcoming the barrier to citizen power. Despite this limitation, STEM ladders remains a fundamental framework in understanding participations in planning. It forces us to critically examine who has power, who is excluded, and how we can work toward more inclusive and meaningful engagement in shaping our communities. The key questions moving forward is how do we overcome these barriers and move toward a more actionable planning process? Now we have explored STEM ladder of citizen participation and its limitation. I want to introduce another widely used framework for understanding public participation, the IAP2 spectrum of public participation. Developed by the International Association for Public Participation, the models built on the idea that public participation exists on a spectrum, with different level of engagement depending on the decision-making process. Unlike Amsterdam ladder, which emphasize the power dynamic and the control, the IAP2 spectrum focuses on the intent behind the public participation, what role the public is expected to play in shaping decision. The spectrum consists of 5 levels: inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. These levels represent increasing degree of public influence, from simply receiving information to having full control over decisions. Each level is associated with a different goal and commitment from decision maker regarding how public input will be used. At the informed level, the goal is simply to provide the public with information about the project, decision, or issue. There is no opportunity for public input, and the participation is one way, much like informing rank on upstream ladder. Governments or agency commit to keeping people informed, but not necessarily incorporating the feedback into decisions. Moving up to consult. The public is invited to share their opinions, usually through surveys, public meetings or hearings. makers commit to consider this feedback, but the final decision still rests with those in power. This levels aligns with consultations on Hobson ladder. There is public input, but no shared authority. At the involved level, the public plays a more active role in the decision-making process. Decision maker commit to working directly with the communities to ensure concerns and aspirations are understood and considered. This is a step beyond consultation as it involves ongoing engagement, but the final decisions are still made by the authorities. At collaborate public participations become more of the partnership between decision maker and the community. The goal at this level is to work together at equal, creating solutions and sharing responsibility. The public has a direct impact on decision making, which aligns closely with the partnership ranks on Armstrong ladder. The highest level in power represents full citizen control, where the public has the authorities to make final decisions. This is the closest equivalent to citizen controls in Upstream model. At this level, communities might be given direct powers over budget, policies, or planning decisions, and the government or agency served a supporting role rather than a controlling one. The IAP2 spectrum provides a more flexible and practical approach to public participation compared to Armstrong ladder. Instead of focusing on power struggles, it helps decision maker define their intentions and clearly communicate the level of influence the public where have in a given process. Next, I want to introduce another important perspective on public participation in planning. Paul Davidoff and his influential work, advocacies and pluralism in planning. Davidoff argues that planning is not and should not be a neutral process. Unlike traditional view that see planners as objective experts working toward a singular best solution, he believes that planning is inherently political because it involves decisions that affect different groups in different ways. He challenges the idea that planners could operate from positions of values neutrality, stating that appropriate planning actions cannot be prescripted from positions of values neutrality. For prescriptions are based on desired objectives. In other words, planning decisions are always shared by the values and priorities of those in power. If planners remain neutral in the face of injustice or inequality, they are actually reinforcing the status quo, which often benefits some groups while excluding others. Instead of pretending to be neutral, Davidoff called for planners to act as advocates, representing the interests of different communities, particularly those who are marginalized and historically excluded meaningful decision making. His concept of advocacy planning emphasized the need for multiple voice and perspectives in planning process. Instead of a single master plan that assume one solution fits all, he argued that uh, 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 different approach where different groups could propose and debate alternative plans. This idea aligns with the principles of participatory democracy, where communities are not just consulted, but actively involved in shaping the environment. David Off believes that a truly democratic urban government should include rather than exclude citizens from a planning decision. Advocacy planning encourage planners to take a stance, work alongside communities, and help amplify their voice rather than just facilitating a process designed by those in power. His idea remains highly relevant today as we continue to debate the role of the planners in addressing issues of equality, social justice, and community empowerment. These questions we must ask: are planners simply facilitators, or should they take a more active roles in advocating for marginalized community? This debate continue to shape how we think about the planning for a more equitable future. Now that we have explored David Off ideas of advocacy planning, let's go deeper into what inclusion truly means in the planning process. For David Off, inclusion was not just about allowing citizens to be heard. It was about ensuring that they were informed and equipped to meaningfully engage. He argued that the public participation is ineffective if community members lack access to the same knowledge and technical language that the professional planners use. So if only planners and the government officials understand the complexities of planning proposals, then the process remains exclusive, even when participation is invited. True inclusions in the David Off view meant that citizens should not only be able to express their opinion, but also understand the reason behind a planning decision and be able to respond in the language of the profession. Without this, public participations become a superficial exercise where community members share concern but lack of the technical expertise to challenge decisions or propose with viable alternatives. He also questioned that traditional approach of having a single master plan that is approved by city councils and planning commissions. He argued that instead of the one official plan, there should be a multiple perspectives and alternative plan to reflect the diverse needs and the priorities of different communities. By allowing for competing plans, David Off believes public agencies would have to justify their proposals and compete for public support rather than assuming their visions was the only valid one. This would make the planning process more democratic and accountable, as citizens would have the ability to choose between different plans rather than simply responding to a single predetermined proposal. Beyond just the planners and the government officials, David Off argues that a broad range of political parties, special interest organizations, and protest movement should be meaningful involved in planning, rather than viewing advocacies and as obstacles to planning. He saw them as an essential voice that challenges dominant narratives and push for more actionable outcomes. His visions of inclusion and uh, uh, fundamentally reshapes the ways we think about participation. Instead of seeing planning as a technical process led by experts, he saw it as a negotiation between multiple stakeholders, where different perspectives could challenge and refine planning decisions to better serve all communities. Okay, now let's talk about the role of the planner as an advocate. Key ideas in David of uh, plural planning approach. In traditional planning, there's often this assumption that there's one best way for a community to develop. Planners are seen as neutral experts who analyze data, make the recommendation, and create a single comprehensive plan that serves the public interest. But David Off challenges this idea. He argued that planning is not neutral, and it should not be treated as a one-size-fits-all process. Instead, he introduced the idea of plural planning, where multiple competing visions for a community's futures are presented, debated, and defended. In this model, advocacies become a central part of the planning. David Off brought the idea of advocacies from legal practice, where in a courtroom, you have uh, like op opposing side arguing the case before a judge. They saw plannings in a similar way. Different groups in a community, whether government agencies, developers, neighborhood organizations, or activities, each have their own interests and priorities. Rather than assuming that one official plan represents the best path forward, planning should be allow for multiple perspectives to be heard and considered. This is where the planners as an advocate comes in. Instead of a neutral facilitator, the advocate planners takes a stand. Just like lawyers represent a client and advocate planners work on behalf of a specific group, defending the visions of what a good society should look like. That could mean working with low-income communities, fighting against displacement, environmental groups pushing for a sustainable development, or organization advocating for affordable housing. The goal is to give a voice to those who may otherwise be left out of the planning process. To be effective, the advocate planners has to do more than just support a cause. They need to provide the technical expertise and strategic guidance that communities need to make up the case. That means gathering and sharing information, analyzing current trends to show how existing policies affect people, simulating future conditions to predict the consequences of different planning decisions, and expanding the tool like zoning law, funding mechanisms, or policy changes that could be used to achieve community goals. More than just identifying a problem, the advocate planners also put forward real actionable solution. At the core of all this, the advocate planner is still a planner, someone trained to develop plans, conduct research, and navigate the complexities of urban development. But unlike traditional planners who typically serve the government or uh, private developers, advocate planners take an active role in shaping the conservation. They challenge power, push for alternative solutions, and help underrepresented communities navigate the planning process. David of ideas of advocacy planning focuses force us to rethink the role of the planners in shaping cities. Are planners just technical experts following orders, or do they have a responsibility to fight for equity and justice? Should they remain neutral, or should they take a stand? These questions continue to shape the field of planning today. Now, let's talk about reaching out to the public and why public engagement is essential in planning. Planning decisions impact communities in significant ways, so gaining on board public support is essential. If people aren't involved in the process, they may feel disconnected from the decision that shapes their neighborhood, which can lead to resistance, mistrust, or missed opportunities for better solutions. That's why planning agencies establish multiple connections with the community, ranging from formal process to more casual everyday interaction. In planning, outreach approaches are key to ensure that public is informed, engaged, and able to participate meaningfully. One common approach is through advisory panels. These are groups of the community members, experts, and stakeholders who provide feedback and help shape planning decisions. Examples include a comprehensive plan task force, which guide long-term city planning, or a bicycle and pedestrian uh, 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 advisory group, which help shape transportation policies. These panels allow for ongoing dialogues between planners and the public, rather than limiting participation to one-time meetings. Another widely used method is public meeting and presentation. This provides a space for planners to share updates on project, gather feedback, and answer questions. The challenge, of course, is that the public meetings doesn't always attract a diverse range of the participants. Often, the people who show up are those who are already highly engaged in local issue, where many others may feel like their voice won't make a difference or simply don't have the time to attend. That's why another important approach is speaking at group events, such as Rotary Club meetings, chambers of commerce gathering, neighborhood association meeting, or other community events. Instead of expecting people to come to a planning meeting, planners go where the community already is, meeting people in spaces where they feel comfortable and engaged. In today's digital world, reaching out to the medium is also a powerful way to inform and engage the public. This could mean issuing press releases, using social mediums, aids, uh, creating informational videos, or partnering with local news outlets to make sure planning updates are widely shared. Social media in particular has become valuable tools for getting feedbacks quickly, reaching younger audience and making making the planning conservations more accessible to those who might not attend the traditional meeting. The bottom line is that planning agencies can't just sit back and wait for the public to come to them. They have to be proactive in reaching out, making participation easier, and ensuring that engagement is meaningful, inclusive, and reflective of the entire community. Now that we have talked about reaching out to the public, the next big question is whether our community engagement efforts are actually effective. It's not just about how many people participate, it's about who participates and whether they truly represent the community as a whole. One of the main goals of the community engagement is to gather the representative sample, a group of participants that reflect the diverse perspectives, demographics, and experiences of the broader population. If we only heard from one segment of the communities, whether that business owners, long-term residents, or a specific age group, we risk making decisions that doesn't serve everyone actively. So, how do we measure whether participation is representative? So first, we look at the total number of participants. Was the turnout high enough to give us meaningful insights? But numbers alone aren't enough. We need to assess who showed up. Are the demographics of participants similar to those of the overall communities? Did we engage people across different age groups, or did we mostly hear from older residents? Did we reach a diverse mix of racial and ethnic groups, or were certain words missing from the conversation? What about socioeconomic diversity? Did we get input from people across different income level, or was the conversation dominated by wealthy residents who may have more time and resources to participate? Did we include both homeowners and renters, who often have very different experiences and concerns when it comes to housing policy and neighborhood development? Beyond this basic demographic, it's also important to look at professional and social affiliations, where local businesses owners engaged in the process. Did we hear from the members of social and volunteer organizations that work closely with underrepresented communities? Did we get a perspective from students, young professionals, or new residents who may have different priorities than long-term community members? If we found that certain groups are underrepresented, that tells us we need to adjust our outreach strategies. Maybe traditional public meeting on reaching working class families. So we need to hold event at more accessible times or location. Maybe language barriers are preventing non-English speaker from engaging. So we need to provide translated materials or translation services. Maybe digital outreach is missing older residents who prefer face-to-face conversation. Automatically, good community engagement isn't just about participation, it's about inclusion. If we only heard from the most vocals or privileged groups, we risk reinforcing existing inequalities rather than addressing them. The goal should always be ensure that the decision we make truly reflect the need and the priority of the whole communities, not just a selected few. Okay, now that we have discussed the importance of the representative sample in community engagement, let's talk about strategies that can help ensure a wider range of voices are heard. Uh, uh, Planning's uh, am, ambassador. Planning ambassadors are trusted community members who act as a bridge between planning agencies and the public. Instead of relying solely on traditional outreach methods like public meetings or surveys, planners can train and empower local ambassadors to engage directly with their own community. These ambassadors help to translate planning concepts into everyday language, bringing planning conversations into culturally relevant spaces, and encourage participation from groups who might otherwise be left out of the process. One great example of this is the community's climate ambassadors program. This program recruits and trains local leaders to engage the communities in climate planning efforts, making sure that diverse perspectives are included in decisions about sustainability, reliance, resilience, and environmental justice. Instead of just asking people to attend a meeting or fill out survey, the program brings the conversation to them using uh, uh, ambassadors to spark dialogues in community centers, place of worship, schools, and other everyday spaces where people feel comfortable sharing their perspective. The benefits of using the planning ambassadors is that it shifts the engagement from being a government-led process to a community-driven effort. People are more likely to trust and engage with someone from their own neighborhood, cultural background, or social network than with an outside agency. Ambassadors can also help planners identify key issues, cultural barriers, and overlooked concerns that might not uh, come up in traditional engagement setting. Now that we have discussed planning ambassadors and how they help to bridge the gaps between planners and the communities. Let's look at real-world examples of communities-driven engagement. The neighborhood partnering programs in Austin, Texas. The neighborhood partnering programs is an initiative that allows residents and the communities groups to actively shape improvements in the neighborhood. Instead of waiting for the cities to take action, this program empower local communities to propose and collaborate on projects that enhance public spaces and infrastructure. This key idea is that when residents are directly involved in shaping the environment, projects are more likely to reflect the true needs and priorities of the communities. So this program, community members can apply for city support and funding for projects like such as sidewalks, trails, community gardens, neighborhood parks, and public arts installation. This program works on a cost-sharing model, where the cities provide financial and technical assistance, and the community contributes through volunteer work, fundraising, or other in-kind contributions. This ensures that both the cities and the communities are invested in the project success. One of the biggest strengths of this program is that it fosters collaboration between neighborhood and the city government. Instead of a top-down approach where planners decide what best, this program create partnership models where residents bring forward ideas and the city help turn them into reality. This approach encourage grassroots participations and ensure that the improvement reflects the actual needs of the people who live here. The neighborhood partnering programs also aligns with the principles of participatory planning that we have been discussing, particularly the idea that communities should have a real say in shaping their own environment. It takes engagement beyond just a public meeting or service and give community direct decision-making powers over local projects. Program like this raises an important question: how can cities create more opportunities for communities to take the lead in shaping their own neighborhoods? The neighborhood partnering programs is one example of the how shifting from government-driven planning to collaborative partnerships can create more inclusive, responsive, and community-focused outcome. Okay, next class we will shift our focus on an important question: how do we make the city works for everyone?